Hello, everyone. I'm Tony Bernardo, Dean of UCLA Anderson, and I'd like to welcome you to today's discussion hosted by the Centers at Anderson, which is also a featured event leading up to UCLA's International Education Week next week. Today's discussion features three terrific guests who will be introduced shortly. We're very glad to have you join us. Our Centers at Anderson act as a hub for leadership insights, faculty research, student and alumni engagement, and service to our communities and the broader society. They operate in such areas as finance, real estate, entrepreneurship, technology, media and entertainment, marketing analytics, and global issues that transcend boundaries. Today's innovation conversation is part of a series of discussions created by the centers, which are collaborating in an effort to share expertise, key lessons, and best practices across disciplines. We know that both now and in the wake of the pandemic, there will be increased opportunities and challenges that will put even greater demands on our leaders, businesses, and society. New strategies for innovation must be assessed and used to ensure future success. Today's discussion, using examples of specific groundbreaking projects in different parts of the world, will highlight how innovative technologies can enable positive change and bring about solutions to improve environmental sustainability and advance social responsibility around the globe. I'm very excited to hear this conversation and learn from today's terrific guests. I hope that you'll engage in this program, learn from it, and ultimately lead in ways that benefit you, your organizations, our communities, and society at large. Now, I'd like to introduce Professor Chris Tang, Faculty Director of UCLA Anderson Center for Global Management and the moderator for today's program. Chris?
Thank you. Good evening, USA. Good morning, Asia. I'm Chris Tang. It's a privilege for me to serve as a moderator for today's event to discuss a very exciting topic, social innovations around the world. Before I start, I would like to thank our Dean, Tony Bernardo, for his support for today's event and his welcome remarks. Before I introduce our panelists, let me say a few words about today's topic. The world has made huge strides in overcoming global poverty. Before COVID, 9.2% of the world survives on less than $1.90 per day, compared to nearly 36% in 1990. This is a big improvement. We're making good progress, but we are not winning the war on poverty yet. Today, half of the extreme poor population lives in 5 countries: India, Nigeria, Democratic Republic of Congo, Ethiopia, and Bangladesh. Worse, 70% of the world's poor are women. What can for-profits and non-for-profit organizations do to reduce poverty? That's a big question. Next, the world is facing a climate crisis. United States is committed to become carbon neutral by 2050, China by 2060, India by 2070. But this is easier said than done. But concrete actions must be taken by industry leaders and by consumers. We all know the energy sector is the biggest polluter. But you may be surprised. The fast fashion industry is one of the top 5 polluters in the world. And also, they are also polluting our environment. Americans throw away their used clothes. Each year, they create 17 million tons of textile. Out of all the 17 million tons of textile they throw away, over 12 million tons end in the landfill. Now, natural fiber can be decomposed in months, but synthetic fibers such as polyester can take up to 200 years to decompose. To save our earth, fast fashion industry must change. Consumers must change. What can be done? Now, there is an old saying, the same old thinking leads to the same old results. Therefore, if we want to change the needle, if we change the direction, we need new ideas. To learn about different ideas, innovative ideas to fight poverty and to fight climate change, I'm delighted to introduce our panelists who join us from the United States, Hong Kong, and India. To begin, let me introduce our panelists. First, Cheryl Gregory is a Senior Manager of Finance at the Bill Gates and Melinda Gates Foundation. Before joining the Gates Foundation in 2015, she was a Senior Manager of Global Planning at Mattel. Cheryl is our UCLA alumnus in class 2010, and welcome, Cheryl. Next up, Edwin Keh is the CEO of Hong Kong Research Institute of Textiles and Apparel, also known as Hong Kong RITA. He also served on the faculty of the Wharton School as well as Hong Kong UST. Last but not least, Shailendra Tyagi is a supply chain consultant in India. Before that, he has 38 years of working experience at ITC, which is a major consumer goods company in India. He served as CEO of the education and stationery business of ITC in Chennai and as Executive VP of Supply Chain at ITC in Calcutta. I'm happy to report that Shailendra's daughter, Apurva Tyagi, is currently our MBA candidate of class 2022. And welcome to all of you. Now, let me start our discussion tonight. Cheryl, let me start with you. Knowing the Gates Foundation is a nonprofit organization who's funding different innovative ideas to fight poverty, disease, and equity issues around the world. Can you tell us a little bit to understand how does Gates Foundation work? How do they define the term social innovations? Over to you.
Thank you. First, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you. I am joining you from my work from home office in Seattle, Washington. I would like to thank Dean Bernardo, Professor Tang, Lucy Allard, and the centers at Anderson for the opportunity to participate in this panel. Now, to answer your question, innovation more broadly is one of the Foundation's 5 core values and is part of everything we do. If you look at some of the areas we focus on, like global health, agriculture, financial services, or education, these sectors need an array of innovative platforms and approaches to help address specific challenges that disproportionately affect the world's poorest. Innovation at the Foundation can show up very differently depending on which of the Foundation's 37 program strategies we might be talking about. It could be that we're working with an innovative partner on an innovative idea, or even that we're investing using an innovative structure to fund the work. The Foundation really tries to focus on the problems that get too little attention otherwise. So if I think about R&D and innovative technologies, we maybe can invest in things that other funders can't fund or don't want to fund, and it gives our partners the freedom to work without worrying about profits. So our funds can oftentimes be fast and flexible, and oftentimes we operate kind of in that space between a commercially viable solution and things that the government or NGOs might routinely fund. But philanthropy can never and should never take the place of government or the private sector. Philanthropy works best when we can kind of prove an idea works, and then businesses and governments help scale it. I'll just briefly mention one example around sanitation. Over the last 10 years, the Foundation has invested over $200 million to support sanitation R&D, especially around reinventing the toilet. 3.5 billion people around the world do not have access to safe sanitation facilities. And as a result, 500,000 children under the age of 5 die every year from diarrheal diseases like typhoid and cholera. The Foundation's grants in this area have really driven social innovation. there are waste processing technologies that are being licensed to companies for production, testing, and commercialization. International standards have been created for non-sewered sanitation systems, which are systems that are not connected to a sewage system, and they kind of fully treat the input into a safely reusable or disposable output. And companies are looking for ways to improve upon these solutions to drive the cost down so that these innovations can be affordable and accessible and reach the populations that the foundation intends to serve. So while the foundation has provided a significant amount of money towards funding this R&D, ultimately bringing these new sanitation technologies into the community will require private companies. And this is a great example of how foundations can provide funding for upstream R&D, but for products to be commercialized and scaled, it really requires partnerships with others, often the private sector or governments.
Well, thank you so much. I'll come back to you later about money, how to get money is very important, all right? So now let me turn to Shailendra. Cheryl gave us a wonderful example about sanitation toilets to help the people who have no access to clean toilets. Now, but then in India, also often face a lot of this kind of similar issues. Now, I know that you work at ITC, and I'm very proud to tell you that I've been teaching the ITC e-Choupal case for the last 10 years, because it is really a transformative innovation to help farmers to transform the farmer's life. That's significant in India. So now ITC e-Choupal, later on you will explain, and has won many numerous awards, including the United Nations Industrial Development Organization Award and the Stockholm Challenge Award. Now, knowing you were one of the leaders who led these projects, it is a privilege for me to learn from you directly about how did this ITC e-Choupal came about. And obviously, I learned that in India, there are many challenges that you may have to face. Can you share with us a little bit in terms of how this e-Choupal, the agri-business division, come about, and then how do you overcome some of the challenges? Please, over to you.
Thank you, Chris. Good morning and good evening, everyone. Just to give you some context of ITC, people may not be aware. So ITC is a diversified conglomerate with a business spanning across FMCG products, hotels, paperboards, packaging, agri-business, and information technology. The company is acknowledged as one of the most valuable enterprise with a gross sales value of $11 billion and market cap of $40 billion in India. Just to give a context on sustainability, ITC would be the only enterprise in the world comparable of its dimension, which is carbon positive, water positive, and solid waste recycling positive for over a decade. So these are the practices we have not started now. We are doing these practices as part of how we do business. Nearly 41% of ITC total energy consumption comes from renewable resources. And you can imagine when you run a paper mill, which requires energy, when you run hotels, which require energy. So 41% from the renewable resources we generate. And ITC's premium luxury hotels have the unique distinction of being the LEED Platinum certified for the sustainability. Just a quick context of why ITC went into e-Choupal. So once you in agri-business or commodity business, it is difficult to create value because margins are very thin. ITC being an Indian company, we don't have multi-country presence, thus increasing the risk in commodities. Large commodity companies have multi-country presence, so you have inter-country arbitrages available. So ITC at that point of time also started diversifying into the food product businesses, which requires crop as per specifications to create consistency in end products. And crop integrity and some cases traceability was important. So that was the reason why ITC thought, how do I get, agri produce at a good quality and at the right time. Now, just to give a small context of Indian agriculture scenario, because it will be totally different what is present in US and the Western world. So India is dominated by small farmers. Average land holding is 1.6 hectares. Dispersed population, 883 million population, which is spread over 550,000 villages with the average population of 800. There's a weak physical infrastructure, and there are challenges in languages. We have 25 languages and 360 dialects. So it is difficult to communicate and difficult to this. Now, when we went to the market, we found how the farmer, is selling the product. Now, in India, there typically is auction process happens in a small market. So India will have, around 70 to 80,000 auction yards spread across the country. And as we know, and as you would know, that auction is the best process for price discovery. However, there were two challenges when we observed this activity, which were, now farmer produces, loads its produce on a truck and reaches a auction yard. Now these auction yards are small, so where you will have 2-3 traders buying the produce. So depending on arrival and quantity of the produce, they will manage the price. But when farmer has reached the village, he has sunk cost into the transportation. So he has no option but to sell. So what is happening here is where information and the transaction is bundled together. So farmer is at a losing end, since once if he doesn't want to sell the produce also, he has to take it back and incurs a large cost, which is handling, transportation, etc. So therefore, when another transaction, what we saw was the farm input purchase, like fertilizer, etc., etc. Now, if you look at farmer, at least in Indian context, is the biggest entrepreneur you can ever have. He looks at the sky, sees the clouds coming, and sows the seeds. Now, if it doesn't rain, you will have no output or lower output. And when he goes to market to purchase these seeds, fertilizer, etc., the shopkeeper there doesn't have information of weather, what to sow, soil condition, etc., and he will push the product where he has larger margins. So typically, what happens is where he requires information before buying a produce, the input for the fields, the information is not there, and what is pushed to him by the dealers, etc., is where they have larger profit. So what is the solution? When we look at these areas, we said these transactions, they are there, but can we reverse the transaction? So for example, not example, to actually what we did. Now, we said when he is selling farmer input, your transaction plus information is bundled together. Can we unbundle it? So can I find a method where I can give him information before, when he is sitting in his village, and then he decides, should I sell or not sell? So you are unbundling the information and transaction. When he is looking at farm input purchase, can I bundle the transaction? So can I tell him beforehand that this is the weather, this is your soil condition, etc., etc., and based on that, he goes to the market and purchases the input material for his this thing. Now, these transactions reversal must take into consideration the realities of the ground. Now, typically, as I said, infrastructure is very, very weak in the village. So what ITC had to do, this e-Choupal was started in 2003, where smart mobile phones were not there. So what we did, we identified villages, took a satellite, VSAT antenna on rooftop. We had put a computer, we had put a battery source, which can run the computer for 6 to 8 hours because power will not come. So all supporting infrastructure was created, and we started communicating prices to farmer through a person in a village, which we called Sanchalak. Now, basically, it is a farmer. Now, there also you have to keep village dynamics in mind. If you take a very large farmer in a small village, he is not accessible. He's a lord of the village. So small farmers are hesitant to access him. If you take a very small farmer, he doesn't enjoy that credibility in that village. So you have to find a farmer who is mid-sized and he has reasonable credibility in the village. Now, obviously, when you think this, you say, well, what stops him from, exploiting the situation there? So what we did, we learned, and what my CEO used to say at that point of time, we repair the aircraft as we fly. So we said, why can't he take an oath in the village? So we did a simple oath, and he used, the Sanchalak has to stand in the village. We used to call other villagers and he used to take an oath that he will serve the village. Now, basically, you are binding them together through morally, other than a transaction. Now, in a smaller society, breaking those, promises is very, very difficult. And similarly, through this computer network, we communicated prices. We also communicated the weather information, etc., so that he can take decision on purchase of the agri inputs, what he required. Obviously, as I said, this was a time-consuming activity, but basically, so what we had was a e-Choupal delivery system. I can spend a lot of time on this, where you have a kiosk where this farmer sits in a village. What we used to call it a walking distance from the farmer, which is in his village. Then we had a hub, what we used to call, which is still there, where farmer takes his produce, which we used to call a tractorable distance. So it would be 25 to 30 kilometers. So he takes his produce there, if he wants to sell to ITC, he gives it there. There is a transparent process of payment, etc., etc. And he takes the money and goes home. And what we also did was, since we established this network, we had a collaborative network of company where companies started coming to us and start selling their produce back to farmers. So what we used to still call it a super highway, where one way you have agri produce moving back, and whatever through that pipe you can sell to them goes back to them. So that is in nutshell what this network looks like. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Shailendra. This is really fascinating because it really reflects that social innovations require a deep understanding about the constraints, require the understanding about the local culture, such that you can develop a solutions such that you have the right people who take the vow with the right information using the mobile phone or the internet, also with the right process such that the farmers feel is fair because they have a choice whether to sell to ITC or sell at the Mandi. So that you help them to make the right informed decisions. So that is really good because that will also create trust as well. Now, I'll come back to you later on is that, well, you provide all these services. Does it really, does it really generate the value for ITC? So can you comment on that? Because it's a costly investment. To what degree you can measure the success that is worth the effort?
You want me to answer now?
Yes, please. Yeah.
So, Chris, when you look at this, this question, as you asked, that who pays for this? It's a large infrastructure. We have, today 8,000 to 9,000 such units and covering 35,000 odd villages. Now, farmer doesn't pay. He's getting information, etc., at free of cost. And transaction only if farmer chooses that he wants to transaction. Now, basically what happens is when you are doing this transaction, actually, you have removed certain intermediaries. Certain activities you have, redefined. So just to give you an example, typically in this transaction, you lower the cost by 2 to 5% in a commodity which is large. So what happens is when farmer used to go to mandi, now ITC needs to buy this material. I have a Ashirwad brand of flour, which is 40% market share in India. So we buy roughly 2 million tons of wheat to feed that. Now I was buying it anyway from the market. Now what happens is when that farmer comes to me directly, I can start segregating the produce depending on quality. Now when you go to mandi, a market yard, they produce from different farmer gets mixed, and what you get is average quality. So one is you have a segregated produce. Now what it is able to do for us, now it is very difficult. Now flour is not a large value add product. It is only one step. So you would take wheat, you crush it, and it is available for consumption. So therefore, to keep consistency in that product is extremely difficult. But what we are able to do by segregating this, so we have a blend. Now, when in India you come and ask for flour, people, there's no blend, but we have a blend. So we say, okay, my flour will have gluten so much, protein so much hectoliter. And what I can do is, since I am buying farmers directly, I can segregate what I will use for my produce and what I will sell in the market. That allows us to charge a premium on our flour in the market. Now ITC flour would be 10 to 15% more expensive than any other flour in the market. Despite that, it is a market leader. Reason being because it produces a very consistent product. That is on the value capture at a higher end level. But however, at a transaction level also, since handling has reduced, so now earlier farmer used to go to a mandi yard, you will have a handling there when he unloads. Then ITC will go to yard and buy, so you will have handling again. So you have, instead of 5 handling, reduce handling to 2. So saving of 3 handlings happen. So all these, once you look at, for example, you used to carry, he will bring material in gunny bags to us. When earlier we were buying, so he will take to go. There's a cost of gunny bag, but when he brings to me in the hubs, which are reasonably automated warehouses, grain warehouses, so I don't need gunny bags. I buy it otherwise and send it into the silos direct. So all these levels you save cost. So typically, if you look at this full orchestra which is running, there is no. It is all cost has been generated through supply chain innovation and value removal, cost removal rather, and generating value at different legs.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This is truly the social innovations, because on one hand, you reduce costs because you cut the middleman. So you reduce the transaction costs. At the same time, you have direct relationship with the farmers. Then you can do segmentations based on the quality. As a result, you can also charge a high premium. So by having savings and also have a higher price premium, so you have all this additional revenue to offset the investment costs. This is really a good innovations. Now, thank you so much. Now let me move on to Edwin. Now, Know Hong Kong, the Research Institute of Textiles and Apparel, is a showcase of innovation in Hong Kong. Just in October alone, your green machine received 2 really fantastic awards, the Hong Kong Green Innovation Award and the Japan Institute of Design Award. Now, can you tell me a little bit about your organization, Hong Kong Retail? What does it really do? And also what you do, how, to what extent you actually benefits maybe saving the environment. Please, we'll look to your explanation, please.
Thanks, Chris, for inviting me, and thank you, Anderson School, for allowing me to join all of you this evening. The Hong Kong Research Institute for Textile and Apparel is a publicly funded applied research center. Our outputs are things that can be useful in the marketplace, and our KPI really is usefulness. And we're a fairly young research institute, been around for about maybe 14, 15 years. And we have 3 major research domains currently, And this is driven by, in our discussion with stakeholders, and these cover sustainability, Industry 4.0, and something we call social good. The research center exists to answer the question of where Hong Kong can continue to add value to the global supply chain for the textile, apparel, and fashion industry. And 70 years ago, Hong Kong was a manufacturer of yarns and garments, and then for the last 30 years, it has been a logistics and a sourcing and buying hub for most of the textile, apparel, fashion industry around the world. What we are trying to answer is what future value creation a small city like Hong Kong can bring for the benefit of the industry, but also benefit for everybody. And sustainability has been one of the key global challenge for all of us. And so we there work on not only challenges around recycling, making use of some of the wasted material and resources that you've commented on, Chris, in your opening remarks, but also to look at the new emerging opportunities in biodiversity and carbon neutrality, and the innovation and development of new and better types of resources, manufacturing technologies, and supply chains, so that we can support the global desire to go carbon neutral. And Hong Kong has a commitment to be carbon neutral as a city by 2050 as well. The garment-to-garment system, or the loop, and it goes by many other names, is a retail innovation project that we worked on, and it's because we've worked on so many industrial scale solutions, we wanted to work on something that is it's a B2C solution that we can interface directly with consumers, demystify the whole recycling process, help them see the value of the resources and the materials that make up the garments that we use every day, and to look for opportunities to make this interesting, useful, and engage more stakeholders at the same time. And we've had a lot of fun on this project, and we continue to evolve it and improve on what we're doing.
Edwin, can you tell us a little more about the G2G, the garment to garments, in terms of how this came about, the idea, how you originated the idea, and also how do you take it to the next step to win all these awards?
Right. Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, we've been working on industrial scale solutions, a large machines to deal with, and systems to deal with industrial waste. But as we work on these, we realized there were a couple of challenges. One, there is a logistics challenge. Materials that are available for recycling are in the wrong parts of the world, right? They're in the consuming economies, not in the manufacturing economies. So how do you get access to those? And then secondly, we really want more. We really want to get the users excited and have a better understanding relationship with garments. We often tell our customers as they come visit our shop is that we currently have a view that what we use are disposables. Our garments are disposable, and we're probably the first generation to think of it that way. For most of history, clothes are things that we treasure, and these are durables that we pass on to the next generation. The garment-to-garment system is a recycling system that we have built inside a shop in a shopping mall, and the whole system end-to-end exists in a 40-foot container. And here we ask consumers to bring us their old clothes, and we inside this glass box, which is the 40-foot container, we first turn the clothes into fibers and build yarns from them, and then we make a new yarns with the old yarns that we create, and then we have a 3D knitting system at the end of the production line, and we make new clothes, and we give these back to the consumer as they sort of walk once around the 40-foot container. And so a couple of experiments there. We're trying to sell a service instead of a product. We are trying to engage the customer with a whole innovation and design process, and we're trying to extend the life of the materials.
This is truly fantastic because one, you really try to convert the old garments back to new garments. You don't really need the virgin materials. So as a result, you don't need to have that much cotton or some other materials. So which is also to reduce the consumption of water and disinfectants or pesticide. Now, but then this is a fantastic idea. So I'm curious about, as you try to roll it out, to scale it up, to I know that Sweden, H&M implemented the system last year, and they would like to scale up. Do you see what are the challenges and opportunities do you see?
Right. Yes, we built the first system in Hong Kong, and then we have since then built a system last year in Stockholm in the flagship store for H&M, because they were excited about the system. And in fact, that system won top 10 global retail of the year for them last year. So they were very excited about them. And now we're in discussions to build at least 2 more systems in Europe and 1 in Asia. It's not going to solve our waste problems, because this is 1 garment at a time. It's not an industrial scale solution, but I think it has captured a lot of the imagination of the users. In our shop alone, in the last 2 years of operation, we have over about 300 groups that have asked if they can tour the facility with us, just to see. And these are heads of states, industry leaders. There are company COOs and CFOs who flew in just to look at these systems that we operate. And so we want this to be a point of engaging with customers. And for the users of the system, we were surprised to get a lot of feedback about the emotional attachment they have to their clothes. Husbands and wives that bring their clothes and tell stories about, this is the garment that my wife proposed in, or recently we had a girl talk about clothes that she got from her parents that she wanted to wear and touch and feel. And we thought those were very special, that it was not only a environmental challenge that we were trying to solve, but it is also a different attitude in how people think about clothes. We continue to develop this system. We identified bottlenecks. So the second generation was just put in a couple of weeks ago, so we can actually increase the volume of this. And then we continue to experiment on this model of engaging at the retail level with customers. We have a new model to grow cotton using hydroponics in an artificial environment. So one of our ambitions next year is to create the world's shortest supply chain. We can go from cotton to garment in one retail shop.
Wow, that is very exciting, because that would be like in terms of end-to-end solutions within one shop. Well, I'm excited to see that in the near future. Now let me go back to Cheryl. She's the one who controls the money, right? So now, Cheryl, after you learn about what ITC, e-Choupal, and Hong Kong retailers, the innovations, so I'm curious about the process by which the Gates Foundation evaluates different project proposals. So suppose someone submits a grant proposal to fight poverty, let's say. So what kind of criteria would you apply to evaluate? And then what kind of measurements do you use to measure the outcome? So I'm curious about that, because we don't know how to get the money from Gates Foundation.
Thank you for that question. And I do wish that I really controlled all the money. So I will first say that each foundation program area has a theory of change, and therefore often has ideas for the types of investments they want to make. We run RFPs occasionally, but we do not accept unsolicited proposals. We typically approach partners with an investment idea or our goals, and then there's an extensive proposal process before funding is received. The proposal process is usually a dialogue between a program officer at the foundation and the partner on how the investment contributes to the foundation's goal in that programmatic area, and what the expected outcomes and impact of the investment are, and of course, like you asked, how it will be measured. Measurement, learning, and evaluation, which we call MLE, is really critical so that we not only understand the impact of any one investment or program, but that we understand how and why the impact happens so that we can learn from it and integrate those learnings into other programs or policy recommendations. I can give an example from the program team that I work closely with, which is our Global Delivery Program. In 9 countries, we support a program that partners with government or local-based partners to strengthen routine childhood immunization in areas that have been traditionally underserved by the health system. The program includes a broad package of interventions intended to strengthen routine immunization financing, management, supply chain, and demand generation for immunization. So MLE helps us understand what elements of this program work in which contexts and for whom, so that the government and implementing partners can adjust their approach as they go. And like I said before, so that we can apply those learnings to other similar contexts. At a more granular level, we can also evaluate specific innovations, such as direct payment of health workers via mobile money, or the use of new mobile vaccine carrying technologies to understand the impact of a specific tool. And given that most of our the programs we fund are global goods, we hope that those learnings can inform the entire sector.
Well, thank you, Cheryl. Now, but then because you don't ask for RFP, then you contact the partner directly. But then some of the partners may not be known to Gates Foundation. They are residing somewhere else. How can they be found? How do they have this opportunity to solve the world's problem?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge, and one that we as an organization are trying to do better in terms of diversifying the partners we work with. We do have one program called the Grand Challenges Exploration Program that is really these open calls go out for specific problem areas, not just problem areas like malaria, but specific aspects of eradicating malaria. And it's open to kind of anyone who wants to submit an idea for initial funding. And so we're experimenting with different ways of reaching new partners, and we found that the Grand Challenges Exploration is a great way to do that. And like I said, it's definitely an area that we continue to look for ways to do better.
Well, thank you. Edwin, I come back to you. I have a quick question on Slido. A participant asked, what is the name of the clothing regeneration system that you mentioned? This person worked with the retailers, would be interested to know that. So the person is Trisha Tyler. What's the name of the regeneration system?
There are multiple new materials that we work with, but I think he's referring to the hydrothermal system. It would be one of the new recycling technologies that we pioneered, which is using heat and pressure to separate and then process recycled materials.
Thank you. Now I come back to Edwin's. The G2G idea is really fantastic, and I have the privilege to work with you on a teaching case that I plan to try it out next year. Now, but then I think that this is such a fantastic idea. Then I personally like to scale it up so we don't need to really waste so much virgin materials. Now, then if you scale up, if you want to scale up, what is holding you back? Is it the financial support, Or is it because you are partners? If you want to industrialize your process to convert all the old clothing items into fiber, into fabrics, so that we don't need that many synthetic fibers, what is holding you back to scale up these operations?
That's a great question, Chris. I think it is not and we learned as we started working on these projects, it is not really a science problem. The technology could be developed. It's actually the easier part of the solution. It is mostly a logistics problem, is the collection. It's like once you squeeze toothpaste out of the tube, it's very hard to get everything back in. So how do you, what is the reverse supply chain that you can get access to the raw material in the first place, the feedstock? And then also it's the business case. If we use a lot of resources, a lot of energy and very expensive machinery, and we produce recycled material that are scratchy, itchy, and doesn't perform as well as virgin material, there is no business case for that. So it is a more comprehensive look at the total problems. Now, Chris, you visited one of the recycling factories that we built in Hong Kong. And that is like a 3-ton-a-day recycling facility. And what we're trying to do there is answer some of those questions. Hong Kong, as you know, is one of the world's most expensive cities. It has labor is expensive, rent is outrageous, and there's lots of controls about what you can discharge and what you can throw into the water and into the air. So in the middle of this, we built this factory, recycling factory, to see if we can make this work in a crowded urban environment or in a first world environment where there is much easier access to feedstock, all the recycled content that we want to process. And our belief is that if we can come up with these types of urbanized solutions that can operate profitably in very high cost environments, then I think we have an opportunity to scale that up very rapidly.
Well, thank you. So in terms of scaling up, so I would like to follow this thought process with Shailendra. The ITC e-Choupal, fantastic idea. Now, when you try to scale up your operations, the different states in India, I know the different states have different culture, they have different background. Can you share with us in terms of, do you see any challenges as you scale up the operation ITC e-Choupal throughout the entire India? And if there were some challenges, how do you overcome them?
Chris, quick response is, see, India, there is an act called APMC Act, which is Agriculture Produce Marketing Committee Act. Now, current government has modified that act. So basically, in this act, corporates can buy produce from farmers directly, which is one at this juncture is not permitted across the country. So some states allow, some states don't allow. So that is one hindrance. Now, assuming that hindrance is taken away over a period of time, which can happen very quickly, ITC has to build capability to market all these produce. Because what we are doing, if you look at typically what is happening in the rural economies, in the emerging economies. Now, emerging economies are characterized by broken value chains that attempt to connect poor as sellers and buyer and markets for produce and services. Often these value chains work fantastically well. However, there are a lot of intermediaries in between who extract disproportionate value for themselves while leaving poor with residual income. Now, tremendous value we think can be unlocked by streamlining these value chains. Now, therefore, what we are also looking at, one is we are shifting platform to the smartphone, which will happen quickly, which is called e-Choupal 4, which is happening. And we are also looking at other services through this. So can I start teaching or provide skills in carpentry or vocational skills to the rural to generate employment? So when you look at network organizations where you have a two-way communication possible, the possibilities are enormous. However, what we must recognize, That efficiency has to come through competition. Power of scale will come through virtual aggregation. And benefit of specialization. ITC can't become expert in everything. So you must collaborate. So it is a collaborative network organization, which will, help the poor, help the companies, and help the value chains to, reach at the next level. And this is the journey which is, taking a new shape. Maybe 2 years down, when you teach e-Choupal, it would be a different phase.
Thank you. I've been following up on the news on ITC e-Choupal 4.0. Yeah, thank you. Now,
yes.
So I think this is really fantastic. I listened to all three of you. We learned about each organization is trying to do good for the poor, for the sick, health, for the environment, and also for the poor. Now, but all these examples, they tend to locate it in developing countries, right? But US alone, we have a lot of problems. We have a lot of social problems. We have our own environmental problems. Look at the water in Flint, full of lead, right? So I would like to ask you, our students, most of them reside in the United States, they are convinced they need to do something to make the world become a better place. So what kind of advice will you give them if they were interested to engage, participate, or involve some of the exciting work that you do? So maybe I start with Cheryl. If you're like your MBA students, they approach you, Cheryl, I like to do that. Where should I start?
Thanks for that. So I would say that you could go in a couple different directions. If you want to do something meaningful as your full-time job, I would think a little more broadly than just, a small nonprofit in your community kind of focused on one thing. That is phenomenal if that's the route that people want to take, because there is a ton of amazing work that is done through nonprofits based in the community. But if that isn't your thing for whatever reason, I would, think about what is the skill set that you have, what's your personal situation, what are you passionate about, and look for ways to think outside the box. I mean, we heard lots of examples today about private organizations, research labs, other ways to look at solving these problems. I also always encourage people to think about board service or volunteer work. I mean, it doesn't have to be your kind of full-time 9-to-5 job, but there are plenty of other ways to get involved, especially if you're passionate about something. And, I know that nonprofits are always looking for folks with business skills for their boards. And so that could be a really useful avenue to pursue.
Yeah, thank you. So I think that in the United States, for example, food bank, they always need more help, more volunteers to feed the people who food insecurity. So I think that is a very good example. Now, Edwin, I want to turn to you now. In terms of your research institute, they're doing really fantastic, very interesting work. Now, for the MBA students, they're more in the business side. Earlier on, you said, well, you need a business case because the fabrics may not be as smooth and whatnot and all this. So if this MBA student, they are interested to explore this, to explore these kind of questions, how should they go about contacting this kind of projects?
Well, first of all, our research center is always looking for new collaborators, and but you have to come with a couple of things. You have to come with great questions, right? You have to have what is it you want to solve for, and a passion for trying to find that answer, and a desire to collaborate. I mentioned earlier, a lot of what we're dealing with are multidisciplined challenges. I think especially for the U.S. side of the challenge, the waste that we see in the world is a lot of it has to do with overproduction and overconsumption, and some of it is certainly in the fashion and textile apparel industry. We are making clothes that are priced wrong, in the wrong colors and the wrong style, shipped to the wrong location, right? And so I think there is still a lot of opportunities to make this a much smarter industry. How can we use better predictive tools? How can we manage inventory better? How can we do fulfillment better? How do we size these things so that we don't have all these returns when we deal with e-commerce? So just bringing all of this into the 21st century and using a lot of the tools that already exist and integrating all of that into our industry. So there's a lot of work and a lot of opportunities.
Thank you. Shailendra, we do have a lot of our students from India or with Indian heritage. If they are interested to explore social innovation projects in India, how should they go about doing that?
So if you look at ITC context, they can contact ITC, and we do these projects in different businesses in Indian context. But hearing from Cheryl and Edwin, I would just like to add that when we go out, we must observe. Half the problem. When you were asking a pointed question, what you see in US, etc. I'll give you a small, quick example. I was doing a supply chain visit to Europe, and I found these trucks which were going to market had a capacity of 32 pallets, and as soon as 32 pallets are loaded in 2 rows, they say truck is full. However, the airspace was empty. And I always wondered, what is this? So how it is? It's a function of how you measure. Now, in India, for example, in ITC, we measure truck space in air, how much is utilization and how much is in tons, and they are amazing results. So what I'm only saying, and you save a lot of wastage. So one thing I would recommend is, one is ITC, they can contact. I can help in that area. And second is, when you go out, you must observe. Don't take things granted. There are a lot of inefficiencies happening in the market, and they are ready to be getting redefined. And that's what startups are doing, if you at one way look at it.
Oh, that's really brilliant in terms of the observance. I think, as Edwin pointed out, that we have so much inventory, so much waste, because we don't have the right product at the right time, at the right place, at the right price. So therefore, maybe there's some innovative ideas we can reduce waste to begin with, right? So that is really good advice. Now, well, in real time, I noticed that in the Slido, there's really not particularly exciting questions, but I think that because your explanation is so clear, so basically that's, I think there's some of the attendants that said they would like to contact you directly. Then as well, they can find your website, and they're interested in any collaborative opportunities, they could contact you directly. Now, so let me just wrap up this evening's discussion. So basically, we learned from all three of you that social innovations does not come from a vacuum. You need to observe maybe some social environmental challenges firsthand. You need to understand the context. You need to understand the culture. Also, you need to understand the constraints. Then you try to come up with ideas. Then you collaborate. Could be with partners, could be with organizations, or with the governments, or with the industry leaders, scientists, educators, you name it, to explore potential solutions. But then, once I observed what Shailendra and Edwin suggested, I do see a pattern. Once you have really a success story, success case, then you need to either to scale up or you expand the scope. So it would be like your hydroponics cotton growing. That is a scope and also scale. And also if for ITC, instead of just in terms of information, you want to expand into education and some other services as well. So in the case, you can create an ecosystem so that you can continue to engage your constituencies, and also you can continue to provide value, create value for the beneficiaries. And then in return, you create more value to society. Hopefully you can recover some of the investment costs. And some of the investment costs could be through R&D grants from the Gates Foundation, right? So I think that all this is part of the ecosystem. Then I hope that all of you could actually participate, engage in this kind of discussion, dialogues, and then be observant to be aware of the challenges that everyone faces. Doesn't matter where you are living in the United States, in India, China, or anywhere else. There are a lot of problems need to be solved. So I think this is a really wonderful discussion this evening. I want to take this moment to thank all three of you for taking the time to share your wisdom and your experience with our attendees. So on this note, last but not least, I want to thank the attendees for taking the time to attend these sessions. And I want to thank all of you for the privilege of your time. Thank you and good night. And thank you. Bye-bye.